Life, in its deepest sense, isn't about the grand moments that you share in the spotlight. It's about the quiet hours, the little interactions, and the subtle exchanges that make up your day-to-day existence. These small moments often reveal the true nature of the people around you, particularly when it comes to how much they truly care about you. And here's the hard truth. There are people who don't care about you, and they will show you in the most explicit ways possible. First and foremost, people who don't care about you consistently disrespect your boundaries. Boundaries aren't just limits. They are the invisible lines that keep you safe, keep you grounded, and allow you to maintain your integrity. When you are in a relationship with someone who doesn't care, they will overstep those boundaries with no regard for how it affects you. And they'll take up more of your time, invade your personal space, demand attention at inconvenient times, and push you to do things that don't align with your needs. If your boundaries are constantly being trampled on, take note. This is not care. This is disregard for your well-being. There's a fundamental truth about relationships, whether they're personal, professional, or social, that often gets overlooked. Boundaries matter. Boundaries are not just abstract concepts. They're the lines that define who we are, protect our emotional well-being, and give us the space to grow. When someone doesn't respect your boundaries, they're not just crossing a line, they're signaling that they don't value your individuality, your needs, or your sense of self. This lack of respect can manifest in subtle or blatant ways, but the impact is always the same. It erodes the trust and integrity of the relationship. People who don't respect your boundaries often do so out of a disregard for your personal space, time, or emotional needs. They may push you to engage when you're not ready, demand your attention when you're busy, or expect you to take on responsibilities that are beyond what you can reasonably give. It's as if your time, your energy, and your well-being are secondary to their desires and convenience. This is a behavior rooted not in malice, but in self-centeredness, a mindset that doesn't recognize or respect the importance of your individual needs. You might notice this in various forms. Perhaps they regularly ask for your time, only to cancel plans at the last minute without so much as an apology. Maybe they constantly push you into uncomfortable situations, expecting you to accommodate their needs without considering the toll it takes on you. This could even extend to emotional boundaries. People who expect you to constantly lend a listening ear or emotional support without ever offering the same in return. These behaviors are all clear signs that they are not respecting your boundaries, and as a result, they are draining your energy, your time, and your sense of self-worth. And that's a long ways down. But here's the thing. Boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're about knowing who you are and what you need in order to thrive. Setting boundaries is an act of self-care. It's about drawing a line that protects your energy and allows you to maintain your sense of individuality, integrity, and peace. People who don't respect your boundaries are essentially saying that your needs don't matter, that your time isn't valuable, and that your feelings are secondary to their own. When boundaries are continually disrespected, a toxic pattern begins to form. You start to feel like you're constantly giving, whether that's your time, your energy, or your emotional resources, but you're not getting anything in return. The person who consistently violates your boundaries doesn't see this dynamic as a problem. They may not even realize they are doing it, but over time, this imbalance causes deep resentment. You start to feel exhausted, depleted, and perhaps even confused, wondering why your needs are never met, why your limits are ignored, and why you feel taken advantage of. But the damage doesn't stop at exhaustion. When people disregard your boundaries, they are undermining your sense of self-respect. Boundaries are not just about keeping others at bay. They are about teaching others how to treat you. If you continually allow someone to push your boundaries, you are inadvertently teaching them that it's okay to disrespect your needs, your space, and your time. It's a subtle form of permission. A permission to treat you however they want without consequence. Over time, this erodes your self-esteem, and you start questioning whether your boundaries are even valid in the first place. The worst part is that people who don't respect your boundaries often don't understand the damage they're causing. They might accuse you of being difficult, sensitive, or selfish when you try to assert your needs. But the reality is, they are the ones being selfish. True respect for another person comes from recognizing their limits and working with them, not trying to manipulate or ignore them for personal gain. People who care about you will support your boundaries, they will respect your space, and they will understand that your well-being is just as important as their own desires. The lack of respect for boundaries also reflects a lack of maturity and emotional intelligence. When someone cannot comprehend the importance of boundaries, they're showing that they haven't yet developed the capacity to respect others fully. Emotional maturity is what allows us to navigate relationships with care and understanding. It allows us to recognize that someone's boundaries are a reflection of their values and needs, not a personal attack or an inconvenience. People who lack this emotional intelligence are often oblivious to the fact that their actions are hurting others, and they may even feel justified in their behavior. But the truth is, their actions are rooted in a fundamental disregard for the feelings and autonomy of others. When boundaries are not respected, it doesn't just affect your relationship with that person. It can ripple out into every other aspect of your life. You start questioning your worth, wondering why you're constantly giving and not receiving in return. You might begin to withdraw, feeling like you have to protect yourself by putting up walls around everyone, because the act of being open and vulnerable has been taken advantage of so many times before. This cycle can leave you isolated, distrustful, and emotionally scarred. But what can you do when someone doesn't respect your boundaries? Well, the first step is to recognize it for what it is, a behavior that signals a lack of respect. Don't make excuses for them. Don't try to justify their actions or let them off the hook. You are entitled to your boundaries, and no one has the right to violate them. It's essential to assert yourself, to communicate clearly about your limits, and to stand firm when someone attempts to push them. If they truly care about you, they will listen and respect your boundaries. If they don't, it's a clear sign that they are not interested in having a healthy, mutually respectful relationship. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges. They are the foundation upon which healthy relationships are built. People who respect your boundaries show that they value and honor you for who you are, not just for what you can provide. When you set clear boundaries and uphold them, you're teaching others how to treat you. And just as importantly, you're teaching yourself how to respect your own worth. Your boundaries are a reflection of your self-respect. If you don't protect them, no one else will. In the end, the way people treat your boundaries tells you everything you need to know about how much they care. Boundaries are not negotiable. They are a vital part of preserving your integrity, your self-worth, and your emotional well-being. So, recognize when someone disrespects your boundaries and make the choice to surround yourself with people who will honor them. Because the truth is, you are worth the respect, the care, and the space to grow. And don't let anyone take that away from you. Inconsistent communication can often be a subtle yet telling sign of someone's lack of genuine care or investment in a relationship. At first glance, it might seem like just a harmless lapse in attention or a temporary issue with life getting in the way. However, when you look closely at the patterns that emerge over time, you start to realize that inconsistency in communication is far from just an occasional oversight. It is, in fact, a behavior that reveals a fundamental disregard for the value of your time, your feelings, and your need for connection. When someone is truly interested in maintaining a relationship with you, they make an effort to stay in touch, to keep the lines of communication open, and to show that they care about your presence in their life. Communication isn't just about exchanging information. It's about connection. It's about staying emotionally engaged and showing the other person that they matter enough for you to prioritize them in your life. When this communication is erratic, it's an indicator that the person may not truly care about the relationship or may not view it as important enough to make the effort to nurture. One of the first signs of inconsistent communication is the sudden silence. You might find yourself reaching out to someone, sending a text, making a call, or initiating a conversation, but receiving no response, or at best a very delayed one. When the response comes, it feels as if the person was never truly present. It's not just a lack of communication. It's a disconnection. You're left in the dark, wondering why they haven't reached out or why they didn't reply sooner. But the truth is, they likely haven't thought about your need for connection, or they don't view it as a priority. It's a disregard for your time and an indication that the relationship is secondary to whatever else they have going on. Of course, there's always time later in the day when you can make more connective time with them. Another form of inconsistent communication comes in the shape of broken promises. Perhaps someone tells you they'll get back to you later, but later never seems to come. Maybe they make plans to keep in touch, but when the time arrives, they don't follow through. You might find yourself questioning whether they even had the intention to keep that promise. This inconsistency can create a sense of confusion and doubt. When someone says they will do something, but their actions fail to align with their words, it shows that their commitment to the relationship is weak or perhaps non-existent. They may have been polite in the moment, but their actions reveal the truth. They aren't prioritizing you. What makes this even more frustrating is when the inconsistency is sporadic. You may begin to question their intentions, wondering whether they care and what you did wrong to cause them to pull back. The unpredictability of it all makes it difficult to establish any stability or trust in the relationship. 1 minute, you're engaged in an ongoing conversation, and the next, you're left wondering whether the connection was ever real. This type of inconsistent communication can leave deep emotional scars. The constant up and down creates a sense of instability and insecurity. The inconsistency breeds confusion, as it's hard to know where you stand with someone who can't commit to clear, steady communication. When people's words don't align with their actions, it leaves you second-guessing everything. What they said, why they said it, and if they even meant it. This creates an emotional burden where you're continually trying to make sense of a situation that is, at its core, fundamentally unreliable. Even more frustrating is the feeling of being taken for granted. When communication is inconsistent, it signals that the person doesn't fully value the relationship or the effort you put into maintaining it. If you're the one always initiating contact, always reaching out to make plans or to check in, you may begin to feel like you're the only one invested in making the connection work. This unbalanced dynamic leaves you feeling exhausted, emotionally drained, and ultimately unappreciated. You begin to question your worth, wondering if your time, your attention, or your love is something that only gets noticed when it's convenient for them and dismissed when it's not. Inconsistent communication doesn't only leave emotional scars, it can also deeply impact your own sense of self-respect. When you constantly make yourself available for someone who doesn't prioritize you in return, you start to lose sight of your own needs. You may find yourself waiting for their response, planning your day around the hope of hearing from them, and questioning your own actions. Never intentionally asking for feedback leads you away from making improvements. Ever. Never even mentioning your own actions. You stop respecting your own time, your own boundaries, and your own emotional health, all in an effort to keep someone engaged who is not showing the same commitment to you. And when you leave them alone, they often terrorize and force themselves upon you. This behavior, when left unchecked, can create a toxic cycle where the other person continually gives you just enough attention to keep you interested, but never enough to make you feel secure or valued. This can also lead to an emotionally manipulative dynamic where you're constantly left chasing after their attention, unsure if you're getting what you deserve, and repeatedly asking yourself if you're enough. They give you just enough to keep you attached, but never enough to make you feel truly wanted or appreciated. And what's more damaging is the emotional withdrawal that often accompanies inconsistent communication. When someone who cares about you communicates inconsistently, it creates emotional distance. You begin to feel disconnected, as if you're on the outside looking in. Over time, this emotional withdrawal builds walls between you, even when the physical proximity might remain the same. The lack of consistent communication erodes the intimacy, the trust, and the emotional bond that should be present in any meaningful relationship. The truth is, communication isn't just about the words exchanged. It's about the intention behind those words. Consistent, clear communication demonstrates that the relationship matters to both parties. It shows that you value each other's time and emotions, that you are willing to make the effort to keep the connection alive and thriving. When communication is inconsistent, however, it reveals that one person, if not both, isn't putting in the necessary effort to maintain the connection. It's a signal that something is out of alignment, something is missing, and without correction, that relationship is bound to suffer. Inconsistent communication is more than just a communication problem. It's a relationship problem. It reflects the lack of commitment, effort, and emotional investment from one or both parties. It can leave you feeling invisible, uncertain, and emotionally unsettled. It may take time, but you must come to understand that you deserve more than just sporadic attention. You deserve consistency, respect, and the assurance that the people you care about will communicate with you in a way that reflects your worth. If someone truly values you, their communication will reflect that. They will take the time to respond when needed, to check in regularly, and to make you feel heard and important. Anything less is simply not enough. You have to learn to set your own standards for communication. And when those standards are consistently violated, you must be willing to move on and protect your emotional well-being. You are worth clear, consistent communication that reflects mutual respect and care. Self-centered behavior can be one of the most draining and disheartening traits in any relationship, whether it be personal, professional, or social. It's not always obvious at first, often disguised by charm, wit, or even occasional kindness. But over time, as patterns begin to emerge, it becomes clear that someone's actions, or lack thereof, are driven entirely by their own needs, desires, and priorities. This behavior not only creates an imbalance in the relationship, but it can also leave you feeling unseen, unheard, and unimportant. When someone is self-centered, everything revolves around them. They view interactions through the lens of their own desires and needs, rarely stopping to consider how their behavior might impact those around them. The world becomes a stage on which they are the leading character and everyone else merely a supporting role, there only to serve, validate, or accommodate them. The problem with this mindset is that it leaves no room for empathy, reciprocity, or mutual care. It disregards the fundamental truth that relationships are built on the idea of shared experiences, understanding, and emotional exchange. A self-centered individual will often dominate conversations, speaking at length about their own life, their triumphs, their problems, their needs, without any real interest in what you have to say. They might ask you questions, but only to pivot the conversation back to themselves as soon as you start to share. They may nod and smile when you talk, but their eyes are already scanning for a way to turn the conversation in their direction. This isn't about curiosity or connection. It's about feeding their own ego. They want to hear their own voice, to confirm that they are the center of attention, and to remind everyone that their needs are the most important in the room. Your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences become secondary, if not irrelevant. Even when they appear to listen, their ability to truly engage with you is limited. A self-centered person's idea of empathy is often shallow and self-serving. They may give you a token response such as, "I understand," or "that's tough," but there's no real emotional connection behind their words. They aren't invested in helping you through your struggles, nor are they trying to understand your point of view. Their response is often framed in a way that circles back to their own experiences, minimizing what you've shared and turning it into a reflection of themselves. This lack of genuine engagement can be incredibly isolating, making you feel like you're talking to a wall where your voice goes unheard and your emotions unvalidated. Another sign of self-centered behavior is the consistent lack of consideration for others. These individuals will often make decisions without consulting or even informing those who will be affected by their actions. Whether it's a last-minute change of plans, an unexpected request, or a disregard for your time and energy, they will act based on their own preferences and desires, assuming that others will adjust accordingly. It's as though their world is the only one that matters and everyone else should simply fall in line. They might expect you to be available at a moment's notice, to rearrange your life to fit their schedule, and to support their needs without ever reciprocating. This lack of regard for your personal boundaries, time, and commitments is a clear reflection of how they view you, not as an equal participant in the relationship, but as someone whose needs can be overlooked. Self-centered behavior often manifests in a lack of accountability. When things go wrong, the self-centered individual rarely takes responsibility for their actions. Instead, they will deflect, minimize, or even outright deny their role in the situation. They may blame others, make excuses, or refuse to acknowledge the impact of their actions on others. This avoidance of responsibility stems from a belief that their perspective, their feelings, and their desires are above reproach. They can do no wrong in their own eyes, and if something goes awry, it's always someone else's fault. This lack of accountability leaves others feeling frustrated, unheard, and ultimately unappreciated. A deeply ingrained, self-centered individual also often exhibits a sense of entitlement. They believe that they deserve special treatment, that the world owes them something, and that others should cater to their needs without hesitation. They might act as though their time is more precious than yours, their goals more important, and their desires paramount. Their expectations of what others should do for them often feel unreasonable, as though they believe they are exempt from the same social contracts that bind everyone else. They may demand your time, energy, and resources without offering anything in return, believing that their worth entitles them to such sacrifices without consideration of fairness or reciprocity. It's not about mutual respect, it's about getting what they want without having to put in the effort. This self-centeredness is often accompanied by a complete lack of gratitude. Even when others go out of their way to support them, they rarely show appreciation. If you do something for them, they might acknowledge it briefly, but the gesture is often fleeting and superficial. There's little to no recognition of the time, effort, or sacrifices you made. This lack of gratitude reinforces their belief that others exist only to fulfill their needs, without any obligation to give in return. It's exhausting to constantly give and never receive recognition or appreciation. Over time, this one-sided dynamic breeds resentment as you begin to realize that your contributions are undervalued and your role is reduced to that of a tool rather than a partner or a friend. Perhaps most damaging is the emotional manipulation that often accompanies self-centered behavior. These individuals are experts at turning situations around to make themselves appear as the victim or the hero, depending on what serves their purpose. They may use guilt, shame, or flattery to manipulate you into doing what they want. They understand the power of emotions and will use your feelings against you, whether it's by making you feel guilty for not giving them your time, or by making you feel inadequate when you don't meet their demands. They will often create a narrative where they are the center of attention and everyone else is either to blame or to praise, depending on the circumstances. This manipulation is emotionally exhausting and leaves you questioning your own motives and emotions as you find yourself caught in their web of self-serving narratives. Hello? Living with someone who is self-centered is like being in a relationship with a perpetual mirror. They only see themselves reflected in everything around them. Your successes feel secondary to theirs. Your feelings are dismissed as unimportant, and your time is wasted in service to their ever-changing whims. Over time, this behavior erodes your sense of self-worth. You begin to question your value in the relationship, wondering if you are truly seen or if you are just an accessory to their life. You may even begin to lose sight of your own needs and desires, as their relentless focus on themselves begins to overshadow your ability to assert your own voice. The last way I believe that people are getting more satisfaction out of life is by losing track of who they are as people. If you give yourself up, it is critical to recognize self-centered behavior and its effects before it becomes entrenched in your relationships. You deserve relationships that are based on mutual respect, understanding, and reciprocity. If someone is consistently putting their needs and desires above yours without regard for your well-being, it is time to set boundaries and reassess the relationship. Self-centeredness isn't just an inconvenience, it's a form of emotional neglect. And in the long run, it's a behavior that will leave you drained, unappreciated, and questioning your worth. Recognize the signs and take the necessary steps to protect your emotional health by prioritizing relationships that honor you as much as you honor them. Absence in times of need is one of the most telling and painful signs of a lack of genuine care or commitment in any relationship. It can be easy to overlook or justify at first, especially when life gets busy or when people seem to have a good reason for being unavailable. But when you find yourself repeatedly in a situation where you are left alone during moments of emotional turmoil, personal struggle, or crisis, it becomes clear that the person who is absent may not truly value or prioritize the relationship. What starts as a minor inconvenience can quickly become a deep source of hurt and disappointment, revealing that the emotional support you thought you could rely on is not as solid as you hoped. When you are going through a challenging time, whether it be a personal crisis, a family emergency, or a difficult period of mental or emotional strain, it's natural to seek out those who are close to you for support. You reach out to friends, family members, or loved ones, hoping that they will be there for you, offering comfort, empathy, and assistance when you need it most. But when those people aren't there, when they choose not to show up, even when you have made it clear that you need help, it sends a powerful message. The absence is not just physical, but emotional and psychological. It speaks to a deeper truth about the nature of the relationship. It's not one built on mutual care and respect, but rather on convenience or self-interest. In times of need, presence isn't just about being physically available. It's about showing up emotionally. It's about being there to listen, to provide comfort, and to offer a helping hand, even when it might require sacrifice or effort. Emotional support is one of the cornerstones of any meaningful relationship. It's what sustains the connection, strengthens the bond, and fosters trust. When someone you care about is absent during your most vulnerable moments, it feels like a betrayal of that trust. You feel abandoned and isolated, left to navigate your struggles alone while the person you counted on is nowhere to be found. There's a difference between occasional absence due to unavoidable circumstances and a pattern of absence during moments that truly matter. We all have times when we are overwhelmed or when other commitments take precedence, and that is understandable. But when someone consistently fails to be there when you need them, when you reach out for emotional support, guidance, or simply a comforting presence, and they consistently choose not to respond or engage, it becomes evident that they are either unwilling or unable to prioritize you in the way you deserve. And that absence, over time, becomes a wound that doesn't heal easily. Despite the pain and loss and loneliness, the pain of absence is magnified by the feeling of being invisible. In the moments where you are struggling, the lack of support can feel like a confirmation that your struggles don't matter to others, that you are not important enough to receive the attention, care, or love you need. When people you care about fail to show up when you need them, you begin to question your own worth in the relationship. You might wonder if they care at all, or if your pain is too much of a burden for them to handle. The emotional toll of this absence is significant. It chips away at your sense of belonging and leaves you feeling small, insignificant, and unworthy of the love and support that everyone deserves during difficult times. This absence also reveals a lack of empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. Empathy is a key element of human connection, and it's what allows people to come together in times of hardship, offering solace and understanding when words alone are not enough. When someone is absent in your time of need, it reflects a failure to recognize your vulnerability and pain. If you go into the last few minutes with defensive grounds, you are locking yourself into the pain. It shows that they are either too self-centered to care, too emotionally distant to understand, or too consumed by their own problems to be available for yours. In either case, their inability to show empathy creates a rift in the relationship, distancing you further from the connection you thought you had. Disrespecting your time is a behavior that often goes unnoticed at first, but over time, it becomes increasingly apparent, and its effects can be deeply frustrating and demoralizing. Time is one of the most valuable resources we have, yet it is also one of the easiest to take for granted, both by ourselves and by others. When someone repeatedly disrespects your time, it sends a clear message that they do not value your presence, your efforts, or your commitments. In any relationship, whether it's with friends, family, or colleagues, time is an essential part of what makes that connection meaningful. To disregard someone's time is to disregard their value as a person, and it is a behavior that can erode the foundation of any relationship. The most basic form of disrespecting someone's time is being consistently late. Whether it's showing up late to a meeting, a social gathering, or simply missing plans altogether, The act of arriving late is a direct sign that the person does not prioritize your time. It doesn't matter how many times they apologize or offer excuses. Repeated lateness is a reflection of a lack of respect for your schedule and commitments. If someone values you and your time, they will make the effort to be punctual. They will understand that your time is just as precious as theirs, and that their actions should reflect this understanding. But when lateness becomes a pattern, it begins to feel like an intentional disregard for your time, as though they assume you will always wait for them, regardless of how long it takes. The same principle applies when someone makes plans with you but repeatedly fails to follow through. They might cancel at the last minute or give you little to no notice that they won't be able to make it. This lack of consideration shows that they don't take your time or the effort you've put into planning the event seriously. It feels like you are being treated as though your time is expendable, as if the commitment you made is not important enough to honor. It's an action that makes you question whether you are being taken seriously, or if you are simply a convenience when they don't have anything better to do. This behavior speaks to a deeper truth about how they perceive the relationship. If they can't respect your time, it's a sign that they may not respect you. Beyond missing appointments or canceling plans, disrespecting your time can also manifest in delayed responses. In today's digital age, it has become easy to communicate via text, email, or social media. A failure to respond promptly can often be a minor inconvenience or a simple oversight. But when it becomes a repeated pattern, it starts to feel like an intentional disregard for your time. Lastly, in serious related news, I just wanted to share something that was very negative. When you reach out to someone, whether to make plans, ask for help, or simply to connect, you expect a reasonable response in return. But if your messages go unanswered for days or even weeks, it's a sign that the person is not prioritizing your time or the relationship. You might start to feel like you are left hanging, uncertain of where you stand and unsure of whether they value your attempt to engage with them. Over time, the delay in communication creates a feeling of emotional neglect, making you wonder if your effort is being ignored or if you are not important enough to warrant a timely response. You also have learned to project an internal social grade, arrogance, grandeur, and greater levels of personal control. Another insidious form of disrespecting your time is the failure to make decisions. When someone consistently drags their feet on making plans, making decisions, or taking action, it creates a frustrating and uncertain environment. It's as if they are asking for your time and energy, but are unwilling to make the necessary effort to reciprocate. This can happen in both personal and professional settings. For example, in the workplace, delays in decision-making can stall progress and cause frustration among colleagues. In personal relationships, when someone constantly hesitates or avoids making a commitment, it feels like you are stuck in limbo, waiting for them to take responsibility or show initiative. This behavior communicates that their time is more valuable than yours, and that they are content to let you waste your time while they take as long as they want to make up their mind. Moreover, disrespecting your time often involves an over-reliance on your availability. Some people, knowingly or unknowingly, begin to take advantage of your willingness to help. They may reach out to you at the last minute, expecting you to drop everything and accommodate them without regard for your own commitments or plans. This sense of entitlement can feel incredibly disheartening, as if they are taking for granted that you will always be available to meet their needs. It's not about genuine connection or mutual support. It's about them placing their needs above yours, assuming that you will prioritize them over your own life. It can be exhausting to constantly adjust your schedule, time, and energy to meet someone else's demands, especially when there is little recognition or appreciation for your flexibility. Over time, this behavior can erode your sense of autonomy and self-worth, leaving you feeling as though you are constantly being taken for granted. When someone disrespects your time, it also often means they are disrespecting your priorities. We all have limited time, and we must make choices about how we spend it. When someone repeatedly disregards your schedule or doesn't honor your time commitments, they are communicating that their needs and preferences come before your own. This can lead to a pattern where you start sacrificing your own goals, needs, and desires to accommodate someone else's demands, only to find that they continue to take your time without reciprocating. Over time, this can cause resentment and frustration. You may start to feel like you are constantly giving but never receiving anything in return. This imbalance in how time is valued and allocated can lead to emotional exhaustion, as you feel like you are always bending to the will of others without your own time being respected or considered. It's important to understand that disrespecting your time isn't always malicious. It can sometimes stem from a lack of awareness, poor time management, or selfishness. But regardless of the reason, the impact is the same. Your time is being devalued, and your needs are not being prioritized. If someone repeatedly demonstrates this behavior, it is essential to recognize it and set boundaries. He goes on, you deserve to have your time respected and treated with the same level of importance that you afford to others. Learning to establish clear boundaries and communicate your expectations can help protect your time and prevent further disrespect. Over time, you will begin to attract people who understand and appreciate the value of your time, creating healthier and more balanced relationships where mutual respect is a foundation, not an afterthought. When you allow others to disrespect your time, you are essentially allowing them to disrespect you. Time is the one thing that cannot be replenished, and once it's gone, it's gone. To continue to allow others to take advantage of your time without appreciation or acknowledgement is to sacrifice your own well-being, your own ambitions, and your own peace of mind. You have the power to decide how and with whom you spend your time, and you must recognize that it is not a resource to be wasted by people who do not value you. In 2025, let us all strive to surround ourselves with people who genuinely care, people who will stand by us, even in our darkest hours, and lift us higher. Let go of those who don't see your value, and instead focus on creating relationships that are rooted in care, respect, and mutual growth.